Have you started your sewing journey and just focused on your top half and sort of avoided pants? Well, no need to fear anymore, because today I'm sharing 2 easy to sew pants, the easiest pants you could ever start your pants adventure. I have made 2 from the same pattern and I've got them here, the sneak peek colorful prints. I have filmed a step-by-step of how to make this one, and you're going to be able to make this type of easy pant in no time if you follow along. So keep watching. Hi sewing friends, my name's Karina from liftingpinsandneedles.com. Welcome to this channel that is all about sewing, limitless sewing, where I aim to bring you very practical sewing content in every single video. You can apply these techniques to other projects that might be similar in your own sewing. So if that sounds like a good idea, go ahead and subscribe, tap on the bell so you don't miss out when I upload new videos, usually 2 to 3 times a week. Today I'm sharing with you a pattern that is a paper pattern, big 4 pattern, Simplicity 1668, and this was sent to me by a friend from the States in a post in an envelope, so I was very happy to receive it. It says on the envelope that it's easy to sew, and they are not lying to you. All the garments on this pattern are really easy to sew, and I think these patterns that have multiple garments and views in the same envelope are so valuable. I mean, there's just so much in this envelope. There is a cardigan or type jacket made out of knit fabric, and then there's a top and a dress. I love the neckline details, and I'm definitely going to make that pattern. But for this one, I have focused on the pants. I had promised months before that I was going to have a beginner-friendly step-by-step for pants. I have done that for shirts, for other basic types of garments, but I hadn't filmed one for pants. So if you have started sewing and you're enjoying making dresses and blouses and anything for your top half and have avoided pants for a long time because first you don't understand the construction or the fit, there is always one pants that you can start with, and these are the easiest type of pants that you can start with. 2 pattern pieces, elasticated waist and a hem. The construction method is the most simple one you could ever sew, so that's why I've chosen this pattern to share with you. And who does not like to make something that is not so complex? I do show you other things that are more complex, you know, but there's time for everything in the sewing world. In this pattern, view C and D are the ones I've focused on. View C are the long pants and view D are the shorts, and they recommend all sorts of woven type fabrics for these projects, even knit fabrics, but I would size down if I made these pants out of a knit fabric. I've chosen a woven fabric. One of the ones I recommend, rayon. One is heavier weight as rayon twill, and the other one's just 100% rayon. They are beautiful prints and fresh to wear for my climate. Now, this is not the first time I made this pattern, and that's why I was excited to make it for myself. While I was back at home in Chile with my parents, I made one for my mum. Fortunately, it fit her straight out of the envelope, didn't really need any fitting adjustments at all. That was for her case. I knew for my case I would need fitting adjustments. This pattern comes from sizes extra small to extra large. That'll take you up to a waist of 41 and a hip of 50 inches. The ease around the hips is maybe 1 to 3 inches depending on the size, and at the waist it doesn't really matter because there's an elasticated waist, so you would need to choose your size based on your hip. Considering all this, I made my mum a size M, and I was sure to trace the pattern because I've made the mistake in the past of cutting out her size. She's always smaller than me, and then I've just lost my entire pattern. So I traced her version, and for mine I went ahead and, you know, did a lot of assessments and then cut out my size actually on the paper. While this is a simple pattern to sew and easier to fit than other types, because this is a semi-fitted, it's not a fitted pant, and from the hip it's a straight leg, and usually these styles are easier to fit. Of course the waist is easier to fit because there's an elastic, so if you're going to start making pants, a style like this is a good place to start. And now it doesn't need to be this specific pattern, you know, you can find another pattern that is this style where it's got a straight leg and an elasticated waist, and you'll be able to follow all the things I'm going to share with you in this video. So in Up Close and So Personal, I'm going to take you through some prep work. Even though it's simple, it doesn't mean I'm going to skip these steps because, you know, I want to get a good result. And I have gone ahead and made a muslin. I think making a muslin or a test version of another fabric is really important to see if you're happy with the fit. I would say 99% of us will not get the perfect fit right out of the envelope because there's so many different things in our lower body, you know, different lengths of rises, shapes of our legs, where we store all our little fatty tissues can be in different areas. So lots of things to consider, and I'm going to share with you some of those. And there is a full step-by-step sew along to making these pants. I have made the shorts, I filmed that, but making the pants is exactly the same. So let's hop into that. This is the pattern Simplicity 1668, and I like these garments that are included in the pattern, especially that neckline with an elasticated detail there. But I'm centering on these two for this video. These are the easiest pants one can make if you've never made a pair. You know, it's only 2 pattern pieces and an elastic on the top and a hem basically. From what I can see, the style is not fitted. It's not loose either, that loose. It's got a straight leg. I'm looking at size L and size XL here. So they give you a range of measurements here when it's like these types of sizing. So for L, the hips go from 42 to 44, considering that is my hip there. And XL 46 to 48. So I want to see how much ease they've drafted into this pattern to see what size I choose. I'm mainly concerned about the hips because the waist is elasticated. Going down the chart on the same column, finished garment measurements. For the pants, the finished hip is 45. And considering that there's a range of 42 to 44, depends on the size, you could have anywhere from 1 to 3 inches of positive ease for this size. For the L, XL would give me 5 inches of positive ease. Anyway, I'm deciding this size, the L. That's the size I'm going to cut and go from there. Here you can see the upper part of the pants. This is the front, shorter crotch there, it's always shorter. And this is the back, longer. It goes off frame right here, but it continues right there. I'm gonna zoom into what I do to these before even thinking about making muslin. Okay, so this is the back piece, this is the top. Now these are very simple pants. The waistline is marked there with that line. The way the waistline is finished on these pants, it's the most simple one that you could ever make, and it's just folding it under by 1 inch, and then the elastic is under there. So there's no waistband, anything like that. So I've marked where the waist will be when that is folded, and you can see that on that faint red line there. And then the pattern has a 5/8 seam allowance everywhere. So I've drawn that seam allowance all along. I've drawn the 5/8 seam allowance with a red pen there. Very faintly, you might see it at 5/8. And same as here, the inseam, I've marked the 5/8 there. And then with my tape measure, I go and measure all of that length there. Now, measuring that, I knew I had to add in some length. I made the first muslin just like the pattern was because I wanted to know if I needed to modify the front and the back. After marking the red line there of the inch and then the 5/8 along that crotch curve of the front, I measured that the length was sort of okay for me at the front, but I measured it short at the back. But I really wanted to see how it was going to fit and how much I really needed to add. So I made a pair and found that it was just too short here, about 1 inch on the top part there. So I didn't want to modify the front, the side seams, that was going to be the same. At the shorten and lengthen line, I just drew a line, put paper behind and cut it up to there, and then just opened it up 1 inch there. That's all I needed to add, and I made the second muslin. So on pants, you will always see that the front comes down lower than the back, of course. You know, we have a bottom at the back, and the difference with mine is that mine's a little bit taller here on this area than the original pattern, and I'm happy with the fit. You can see the muslin, I've just dirty folded it under, and I have an elastic in there pinned together. I haven't actually sewn that because I wanted to see how much length of elastic I wanted. I think that's just personal, how tight or how loose you want it. I tend to go on the looser end of elastics. I don't like feeling anything tight on my body. So That's the muslin. It's just cotton. Because I'm interested in making shorts and pants, and they're both included in the same pattern piece, as you can see there. That's the cut line for the shorts. I'm going to trace the short parts and have a separate pattern piece so I can lengthen it, and then I'll just keep this original one to make the long ones, you know. So I've got 2 sets of pattern pieces now. I've copied onto other paper the shorts part of the original version with the lengthened area so that I can have 2 separate sets of pattern pieces. I have a sneaky feeling I'm going to be using the shorts more than the pants, but they are the same essentially, everything. The back already includes that modification I made to the length, and it looks different there because it's been lengthened, you know. But I like doing this, and that's how I don't have to chop up my original one at that cut line, and I was going to have to chop it anyway because I wanted to lengthen it. So I think this is a good use for my scrap paper. This rayon twill has a print, and unfortunately the flowers do have a direction, so I had to use the way that's going to use the most fabric, which is placing the back and the front in the same direction. I made sure to have the selvage on this side, and so whatever's left over there is on the fold, and it extended will be a larger piece that I can later use for something else, color blocking or something. I'm always looking for ways to use fabric more effectively. I made sure to put the grain line mark the same distance, you know, to the selvage. The back piece, I flipped it and I drew the grain line on the other side as well so I can measure properly. And all that excess there, you'll probably see it in another project at some point. For the sake of sharing how I would do it if this fabric was non-directional, I unpinned what I had there and flipped it and just put that curve there and that curve there. And you can save quite a chunk of fabric by doing this, but your fabric doesn't have to have a nab or direction or anything like that. In this case, if I do this, I'll have upside down flowers on the back, and I don't want that. So I'm going to have to use the way that just uses up more fabric. In this case, I would still measure the grain line there and keep it the same distance from the selvage there. So only 2 pattern pieces, super easy. This is the back. The crotch is longer and wider, the leg is wider, that crotch is shorter, the pattern piece is smaller. That's how you can tell that's the front. The way that the pattern has you assemble this is super easy. It's just basically putting the inseams together first. So I'm going to take one of the back and one of the front, the ones that are on the bottom, and then I'm just going to put them right sides together there, and the same for the other leg. Okay, so I've got both of the legs right sides together, inseam there, inseam there. So 5/8 of an inch on each of these seams. So it's basically like putting one tube together and the other tube together. Inseams first and then side seams. Before I go and sew the inseam of my shorts, you can see this is the pattern piece. This is size large, and you can see the little pokey bit there that marks where the shorts start. So that was where I cut my shorts. So let's pretend that that's what I'm seeing there. There are notches to match right there, right? So those notches match there, the hems match there. But look at this. This is the front that I have on top of the back. And from this notch up to here, the front looks longer, about 1/4 of an inch longer. And then we have these dots there that need to match each other. So I'm going to put one dot on top of the other dot there. And you can see that there's a bit of excess fabric here on the front inseam. Look at this. It's like more length right there for this to match properly right there. Pin front to back at inner leg seams, matching notches and small dots. So I've matched the small dot and I've matched the notch. And then it says stitch seam stretching back to fit. So when I sew, I basically have to stretch this to match the length of the front. And now the easiest way to do that is when you have to ease an area into a smaller length is to put the longest bit underneath. So the feed dogs are going to help that ease in. So I'm going to sew with my back pattern piece on the top. And I'm going to pin that and show you how that looks on the pants, and then show you how I'm going to sew that. Okay, I have my inseam here, and this is the front leg facing up, and this is the notch there that I was supposed to match with the back leg right there, so that's matched. This is the dot that I was supposed to match with that dot on the back, and this is where you have excess in length here on the front inseam, so it's a bit longer than the back. So instead of stretching and doing weird things, I'm just going to put the shorter length on the top and leave the longer length or the front inseam on the bottom, so that the feed dogs can ease in this area where there's a length discrepancy. Now this is how the pattern was drafted. It's not an error, it's just the way they drafted this ease to compensate for volume taken from somewhere else. So I'm going to go ahead and sew this at 5/8 of an inch. I'll be using a straight stitch with a 3.0 stitch length and sew at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, guiding myself on the plate there on the bottom. Okay, this is where the notch is, and this is where the dot is, and the excess length is under there. And I'm just going to sew normally, and the feed dogs underneath are just going to ease it all in. And I'm going back and forwards to tack this. Okay, here's the inseam sewn, and you can't tell that the front had excess length. This is the front inseam. It looks perfectly sewn onto the back, and that 1/4 of an inch excess is gone. It's just perfect. And that's what you get when you put the longer piece at the bottom instead of at the top. So on the other inseam, I'm going to just do exactly the same thing. Okay, now that both inseams are sewn, I'm going to take this same leg and now pin the side seams together and sew those together. Now this is pretty straightforward. It's just a pretty straight seam. There's not much shaping to these shorts or the pants. So straightforward. And you can see the bottom where the hem has been trued, that little shape there that'll allow you to fold up the hem correctly. So same seam allowance, 5/8 of an inch. So that long seam has been sewn, and now I'll repeat on the other leg. Okay, all these seams have been sewn with the 5/8 seam allowance. You see it's quite wide. That doesn't need to be there in your finished garment. So I'm going to serge this, and as I'm serging, I'm going to be trimming it off to 3/8 of an inch. If you don't have a serger and you finish your seams another way, you could always just trim it with the scissors and then zigzag or any other method you like using. I spent many years without one, and now that I have one, even as basic as it is, I won't go back to not using it. So you can see, if you have a serger, you can always adjust and trim off what you need to be taken out of this excess. So that's how mine looks. I like this seam allowance. I think it's a nice workable seam allowance that looks nice to be worn and to be pressed and everything, and all the excess fell there. I've made it to the ironing board to press some seams. I have the front one here. As usual, you can tell because it's smaller, narrower. And the little seam, the shorter one, I'm also going to press it towards the back, so this way. I'll repeat with the other leg. So I've got both legs sewn separately. The inseams have been sewn, the side seams have been serged, they've been pressed. Both of these seams have been pressed towards the back. What you can see here on the top is the front leg, and you can tell it's shorter here on the rise, and the back leg is longer. So now choose whichever one you want and turn it right sides out. You can see the beautiful print that I've chosen. And now this one, you're going to slide it inside the other one. And you're going to end up with the fabric being right sides together, matching this inseam right there, matching those two seams. So you're going to have the back there that's longer. There are going to be notch marks there to match this nicely. And then the front that is shorter. So all this needs to be matched, then pinned nicely, and then it's just one continuous stitch So it'll be one continuous stitch like that at 5/8 of an inch and then serge. So I've got all this crotch there pinned together. These are the inseams that are matching, and I put a pin right there at the seam coming out on the other side and want to hold that in place. I just put the pins however they were going to suit me best, and when I want to match seams I put them horizontally like this and I remove them at the last minute. All the rest are just done vertically. And look, if you're working with super delicate fabric, you want to put your pins within the seam allowance. If there's any chance that the pin's going to leave a mark on your fabric, put them sort of closer to the edge. In this case, this is not that type of delicate fabric, so I can just place them wherever I want and I'm not concerned about that. This is where the inseams meet and where I have the horizontal pins, and I'm just going to go really slowly and then hand crank over these pins. I'd rather not remove them to ensure that these seams are going to meet there, although no one's going to be looking at the bottom part of my crotch, but still. You can see all the curve that I'm manipulating to sew this one. That's all sewn. Make sure that these seams are both pointing in the right direction, in the same direction. And now I'm going to trim this off while I serge the edge. Once this seam has been sewn, you can just pull out the leg, you know, and you have shorts or pants, because it's the same thing. See? Everything's been united, and that's making the shorts look like shorts. Now on the top, now the instructions have you sew the elastic onto the edge of the top here directly, and you have to go stretching out the elastic to meet the width of the top. But for this one, I want it to look different. I want it to look nicer and be more comfortable. So when I was cutting out my pants, cut 1/4 inch extra on the top, and I want to fold that. So I want to have a first fold at 1/4 inch, and then the second fold will be at 1 inch. And it will look like that on the inside. I think that's going to look nicer, and I'm going to go ahead to help me press nice and accurately. I'm going to sew on the edge at 1/4 inch, guided by a presser foot with a long stitch length so I can remove it later, and that is going to help me press really well, that first little fold. And I'm going to do the same at the bottom here. On the hems, I could always just go eyeballing this distance while I'm ironing, and I would do that, but for the sake of precision, I'm going to do the guide stitch. I have my 1/4 inch foot there that I'm going to be guiding onto the edge, and that will help me sew really straight. And I've put a really long stitch length. This little stitch being here is just going to help me press and not make it all go wavy and wonky like that. And this is the hem. I'll do that on the other leg, and I'm also going to do that at the very top where I'm going to be putting the elastic. So I've done that little tiny press on the top. I have pressed the front crotch to one side, whichever side I chose, and I made sure to continue pressing the same way. So that's the intersection there. And close up here. So that's this continuous stitch that I've just done and serged, and I've pressed it this way, and this is the inseam there, and this is the area I really wanted to have precise and neat. So all that continues down there is the back, and it's all pressed towards the same side. You can see that guide stitch that helped me press this accurately, and it'll fly off, so I'll just remove it quickly. And then after I've removed it, I'm just going to get my little seam gauge. I've marked it at 1 inch, and then I'm going to be folding towards the inside and just measuring and pinning. I've got the hem pinned and the top where the elastic is going to get threaded through. So you can see I've folded it and pinned everywhere. Now the hem allowance was 1 inch. I was supposed to fold this under 1 inch, but I thought it was too much. So I just folded it 3/4 of an inch or 2 centimeters. So I've got the first little fold in there, 1/4 inch, and then the second, and it's all ready to be hand basted. I'd rather just hand sew it really quickly, big stitches, and then go through the machine. This is the top. It's already hand basted, and now I'm going to go ahead and sew on the edge. I'm going to choose an area that's red on the outside to start and stop and leave an opening there for the elastic. So I'm just going to start somewhere around the back. That's where I started before, and I'm going to leave that gap open there. Now I'm going to sew the hems, both of the legs, and then the last step I'm going to do is put the elastic through. After sewing this fold and the hem, I've got my elastic that I already know the length I want to use and measure it on myself with the muslin. I just use a huge safety pin to put this through, and I just push it all the way through until I reach the other side, and I go touching, making sure it's not going to twist inside. Okay, so I've pulled this out the other side and I have this excess there. I put a pin there, and I've tried these on for the last time to make sure this is the length that I like. So I'm just going to trim off some of this excess, and I'm going to overlap it. And then on the sewing machine, I'm just going to secure, and then with the machine, I'm just going to sew that together there. To sew these together, I'm going to use a zigzag stitch. The zigzag stitch because this will allow it to stretch as well. If I did a straight stitch, they might pop. So I'm just going to put that back inside, and you got to touch and make sure that it didn't twist on the inside before you sew it together. But this is fine. And now I have this little opening here that I'm just going to close, and then the shorts are done. These are the shorts. I've got them hanging here. This is a print that is gorgeous in my opinion, you know, of course. This is a rayon twill, and it's got flowers, and the flowers are actually directional. The stems of the flowers all head in one direction, and I couldn't like place my pattern pieces upside down as I showed you, but I'm confident I'm gonna get a garment out of the leftovers from the sides. You can see how simple this is. You know, the fold here is 1 inch, and the pattern calls for a 1 inch elastic, but I don't like having elastics like really tight in there. So I cut my elastic to 3/4, so a little bit smaller than the inch that is required. And you know, I like to measure this on myself so I know that this is going to be nice. I like it loose. I mean, I like it to not fall, so that I walk and it's not going to fall, but I don't like it like being really tight on me. I don't like it. I think it's really uncomfortable. So really nice. You've already seen this inside and out when I made it, and I just absolutely love it. I think I'm gonna make many of these. It takes absolutely no time to make these. The process of lengthening these shorts a little bit, I lengthened them by 2 inches, is similar to what I did to the Pietra pants by Closet Case Patterns. So if you're interested to see a little bit more, you can see on that video that I'll link above. For the ladies that join me on Patreon and that have access to exclusive footage, I have filmed that for them there. So if you're on Patreon, go and look at the account because that extra video is there for you. I did make a muslin in a more structured fabric, like a cotton, and I don't think I would try and make these types of shorts in a structured fabric. I like the drape of rayon twill or like tencel twill or anything that's a little bit medium weight but that has a really nice drape. I prefer that flowy look to a more stiffer structured look for this style. Time flash by. This is the other one, and I made an almost full length version. It's not full length. I know chopping pants above the ankle is not a length that everyone likes to wear, but I do like to wear that, and I think it's appropriate for my weather. It's a bit more fresh at the bottom of my legs, and I think I can pull it off. I like how that looks on me. So I did chop from the hem up an amount about 10 centimeters, and I didn't need to fuss around with the hem or anything because the pant pattern shape is really straight, so it's easy to make that type of adjustment when it's not like a tapered leg or a leg that flares out, you know. This is just straight down, so that's pretty easy. And I've chosen this print. This is 100% rayon, so it's lighter weight than the other one, and it's full of flowers. Now, when I was placing the pattern pieces on the fabric, I was careful to not get a full flower right there on the crotch, because that would not look good. So I was careful to get mainly navy blue and small little leaves there on that crotch area there, and leave the flowers to other areas of the garment. This wasn't planned, but I ended up with 2 white flowers on my bottom, 1 on each side, but you know, doesn't matter. I've turned this around. You can see that is finished nice and neat. The elastic is loose in there. I didn't top stitch it down. It's not flipping around anywhere. In the hem right there, very neatly done.
Don't you think this is starting to wear on me? You've been rated down like hell. I'm weak. I have tried to give you my soul, but you can't love something you own. It's too late to repair what we made. What can I do? Time flashed by and I woke up on the other side of the moon. The sun don't rise, all the light is gone from me and you. Time flashed by and I woke up on the other side of the moon.
You know, if you make these and you get the fit right, you can make so many of these and you're going to be so happy. It feels like you're wearing pajamas, and you know, you can choose nice fabric and get a really nice look and just have a really good experience with these pants. I think if you're going to start making pants, look for a style like this. It doesn't need to be Simplicity 1668. I know it's a pattern that's out of print, easily available though. If you're in the States, you can find it on eBay or other places, because I looked online. But there are so many patterns that are this style, you know. This type of construction where you put one leg into the other is so simple. When you get into other types of pants that have zippers on the side hip or at the back or the front, then you start getting into different pant construction methods. But getting this one down right, then you're sort of more aware of how 2 legs come together, you know, what seams go with which, and then you can go step by step advancing in your pant making journey in the techniques bit, you know. Then there's all the fitting aspects. I did need to do some fitting adjustments, very minimal, lengthen the rise, not that much compared to all the adjustments that exist for making pants. But these style of pants usually need less adjustments than others, so it's a good place to start. So one small change I would make to these as well, to give it another option and for comfort as well, is on the top adding a yoga waistband. And I have done this to many pants before, so instead of having all that elastic on the top, I would cut away that excess that is folded in and then calculate how big my yoga waistband is going to be and just drop that rise a little bit. It's something that you would play with, and that would give you a really comfy pull-on pant without having elastic. Just something to think about. I hope this was a practical video that you could enjoy and get something new. And if you're advanced, you know, this might be easy peasy for you, but maybe there was something I mentioned that you hadn't seen before. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the content, tap on the like, and I will see you very soon with another sewing video. Bye.
Don't you think this is starting to